Hello.
Look who's here.
Hi.
Hello!
I feel weird doing that. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Status Coup. We are
Don't
here
make
for.
the mistake of saying the wrong channel, Jen. We don't want that.
I wouldn't
I
do
know.
that.
It's like you got to think about it for a second.
No, we're here for Jordan. So, hi, all. Welcome to Status Coup on Monday evening. It is July 3rd. It is 7 o'clock, 7:15, sorry.
Yes, we had some technical difficulties. We should have been here at 7, but, fashionably late. And
It's me, and I don't know what it is, and I'm a little bit stressed about the computer thing, but
Well,
I'm happy with how it looks right now. It's fine.
well, if it was my fault, I would never have heard the end of it. But I was way on time. In fact, I was here 20 minutes early. So I didn't want to mess up. But
I was here. I've been here for so long. That's the point. I'm not late, I assure you. I've been trying to do it for a while.
please do not pay any attention to the bath towel that is over Jen's shoulder.
I can't use the blur because I'm on my phone and I have to be in the back. Just please.
Please explain to the audience who have not been watching Generational Change over the past few weeks exactly where you are and why it looks like you're kind of,
Why I'm in a bathroom? Because I'm in a bathroom.
Yeah.
So I am in Asheville for another few weeks. I am up in the mountains, and this is an Airbnb, and just the way that it's set up, this is the best setup space lighting situation for me to do this, and it is in the bathroom.
Well, I am lucky enough to be in our studio, which is in Florida, and we have lots to talk about this evening. But of course,
I feel like we haven't talked in a long time about like news, and so many things have happened.
Yeah, so I'm getting criticized already from Ray J about me not putting on a T-shirt this evening. Listen, I got the T-shirt ready, and we'll be going live as we usually do at 9 o'clock.
On your show, I will be happy to wear the T-shirt. I'm not doing that.
Listen, whatever you guys want, we're going to have some fun this evening. If you have some requests regarding any particular guests you want me to bring on board, let me know. I'm already getting a Trump request from the crowd. So, yeah, we'll have a little fun here. Smash that like button. Share this everywhere. Let's see what type of impressive numbers the gruesome twosome can pull in this evening from Florida. So, Colin, we're obviously going to start with the article that came out earlier today, which is one that you would probably expect from corporate media regarding how they're going to phrase it. But for most of you who have been paying attention, we do not exactly have a president who inspires a lot of confidence in the average American. We obviously get stuck in our little bubbles and stuff. But today there was an article in Politico that addressed the fact that President Biden is in a lot of trouble, and rightfully so. His numbers are absolutely deplorable, no pun intended. But his approval ratings are pretty much in the 30s, fairly consistently. In hypothetical primary matchups between himself, RFK, and Marianne Williamson, he is having trouble cracking 60% in many instances. And in general election matchups against both Donald Trump and Ron DeSantis, he is losing and is losing consistently. So the article that came out today was more or less suggesting that, yes, President Biden should be primaried, and that's not including the two people that are currently challenging him. The suggestion is that he is primaried by a worthy opponent. And of course, the first name that comes to mind, and is of no surprise, I'm sure, to anybody, it is Gavin Newsom, who we have been talking about on our channel, is basically like waiting in the background, waiting for the approval of the Democratic establishment to basically say, I'm going to get in this thing, and the full weight of the money, bundlers and whatnot are basically going to get behind me, and I'm the one who's going to run for president. We see him constantly, tiptoeing around the idea, poking the bear with Ron DeSantis in particular. How do you see this unfolding right now? Do you think there is any chance that there's going to be more of this creeping discussion of, the president needs to be challenged?
Okay, can we first address that if you make it all the way through the Politico article, which I did, and you get down to the end, you can see the other array of characters that they're suggesting would be good primary contestants against Joe. And so you get that. And I swear to you, so anyone, even Beto O'Rourke or Amy Klobuchar or Cory Booker, like
Robert Francis O'Rourke.
well, I
like
mean,
real name.
this is so absurd. So it's hard to like, while I do agree, Joe should be primaried because he's completely ineffective and has no chance of beating the Republican. None of these people would do it either. So that's the problem. Like, I understand he needs to be primaried, but I have yet to see a name mentioned that even if they were to primary him and beat him, I have yet to see a name mentioned that I think is somebody that could really win a national election.
Whoever ultimately would primary him, and I still think that there is a realistic shot that Gavin Newsom is going to get in the race. And the reason I think that is because he's the only person who you can sell on the national stage. Now, I still think Trump or DeSantis is the next president, as painful as that is to have to say. But I really do think that he's the only one out of any of the cast of characters that are out there, whether it is Kamala, whether it is Pete, whether it is Governor Pritzker. Dare you even suggest this idea that O'Rourke would attempt to run again? He probably would. Even the potential of Elizabeth Warren running again. The only person out of that entire group that I could at least see with the stage presence of running for president is Newsom. He's the only one. Anybody else that they would throw out there is just more of the same. But I think the Democrats are in a lot of trouble, and people are just like trying to pretend that, but the Republicans are so terrible. That's why this two-party system is such a failure, and people are sick of it at this point. They want something else, so it shouldn't come as a surprise that you have currently Dr. Cornel West running in the Green Party, and the first national poll that came out with him included has him at 6%.
Yeah. The only thing about Newsom that I think is it's hard for me to envision a universe wherein he challenges Joe and doesn't, like, I can only see him getting involved if Joe wasn't running. I just don't see, I see him as waiting in the wings and waiting until 28, more so than I see him challenging Joe. I don't know. He's just so in the inner circle that it just seems to me highly unlikely that he would get involved at this point.
I think Carl's brings up a good point, and that, of course, is who would look like a presidential candidate, and that, of course, is Governor Whitmer in Michigan. Now, there are things on her record that she'd be able to run on, particularly dealing with eliminating the right to work laws in the state, which I think is a huge deal, but you cannot neglect or ignore the fact that she has not one, but two environmental catastrophes on her lap in both Flint, Michigan, and Kalamazoo, Michigan, and these are blue cities. This is not like the boony red parts of the state. And let's be honest, it's a pretty healthy blend in the state of Michigan. But these are two areas that have been suffering mightily for many, many years of an environmental disaster, whether it is with the water pipes in Flint or the paper mill in Kalamazoo. People are sick, people are dying, and they are trying to sweep this shit under the rug like it's not happening. So do I think that under normal circumstances, Governor Whitmer would have a chance at being a viable candidate? Yes, and I still think she's going to run in 2028. But when she finally hits the national stage, she's not going to be able to talk her way out of these two major environmental scandals, because that's what they are.
Yeah, I think it's pretty huge. But, you know, it's like I always say about people, the more name recognition you get, the deeper people are going to dig into your stuff and be talking about you. And sometimes with these people, they have this level of hubris that knows no bounds. And the more name recognition and the more publicly people are aware of you, the more your crap is coming out. That's just how this is going to work. And I don't see how somebody who has that kind of blood on their hands, and granted, she inherited a problem, but she hasn't done anything to remedy it. As last I heard, she hasn't prosecuted, or her administration hasn't prosecuted the previous administration. So she hasn't done anything to solve the problem. So I don't see how she can respond to anything regarding those crises in any way.
And Canispan brings up they're going to probably run Newsom as president and Whitmer as VP. Well, as you have pointed out many a times, the Democrats are really in a very tough spot here because of Vice President Harris and what she represents when it comes to the bougie, liberal, overwoke crowd that do not care about policy. They care about optics, and optics is everything to them. And having a woman of color as the vice president is great. Why don't we make her the president next? That is going to be a problem because even though they're not a large swath of the electorate, they're relatively niche. They're very influential, and they also have a lot of money.
Yeah, I actually think one of the largest reasons that Joe is actually running again is because they know they can't run Kamala. And I think that any way around her is going to just be really bad optics, with this whole, they're so into identity politics. They're so enchanted by this idea of the first Black woman vice president. So the thought of them going around her in any way just does not seem like a politically smart move. And I would add, they know that she can't possibly win. So those things, like what are that's why Joe's, I think, stuck running.
Yeah, and friend of the show, awesome lady, Lila Charles Lee, Punch Up Pod. Love that they say anyone under 75 in order to shut out Bernie. Well, of course. I mean, the goal here is not to have a primary that involves anyone who is not going to be running for president in support of Wall Street and Silicon Valley. That is not acceptable. So people could get in, and candidates that are willing to challenge the president, you're more than welcome to do it, but the buck stops at who funds the party. That is all that matters. Because if you're looking at this objectively, based on the actions of the Democratic Party as of late, they do not care if they win or lose next year. What matters is that the status quo is maintained. That is first and foremost. The rest is, if they win by accident, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, they didn't really win last time as much as we think Trump lost. I mean, that was a big part of it, and COVID and a lot of stuff. But I think if they were to run Kamala, that it would just be so. I just think it would look so poorly on the. I just think she would do very poorly, and I just think it would end disastrously.
Yeah, it's definitely they're definitely between a rock and a hard place, and they're kind of just trying to see how long they can possibly pass the buck off before somebody eventually screams 5 alarm fire. But I already think they're at that stage. And I think more and more people, because of the fact that the majority of the country, if you combine the voting populace, do not want Biden and they do not want Trump. So they're going to be looking in another direction. They want something else. There's a reason why RFK is already polling over 20%. There's a reason why Dr. West is polling at 6% in the Greens. There's a reason why, even though it's not what you would call a structural campaign at this point, but even Marianne is still polling around 10%. So people are desperate for something else. They are not going to be settling this time. And the more we evolve into the electoral season, the more people are going to say, now, I really don't want President Biden running again, and I don't want to support him. So that to me says a lot in terms of this article coming out right now from Politico saying that President Biden should be challenged in a primary.
Yeah. Can we? It's just so ridiculous that this is like that they're still talking about this. But can we also address the fact that RFK was polling higher than many of the Republicans on their primary, which just goes to show you that it's really like just dissatisfaction across the board.
It is. We're in a very tricky time right now, and the majority of the country is very disillusioned with what's going on. And since, we're here and we want to obviously share with people exactly what it is that we do on our show, because let's be honest, we know the direction that the state of Florida is going to be going next election cycle. It will be red. And we are, of course, looking at the looming prospect of, again, having Senator Voldemort, Rick Scott, Medicare fraudster, reelected for 6 more years, which is really unfortunate. So what are we doing right now in the state of Florida that has considerably more substantive and could have greater impact on our daily lives?
Well, we're trying to regain female bodily autonomy. So one of the things about Florida that is kind of cool, in some ways electorally, there are some cool things. We actually have a process for ballot initiatives to get things on our ballot. So right now there is a ballot initiative circulating around the state. If we can get, it's like a little less than 1 million by the end of the year, by December 31st, it can be on the November 24 ballot. It will put our abortion rights in our Constitution. Apparently, Florida just simply having the right to privacy in its Constitution, which we do. Florida literally has the right to privacy in its Constitution, unlike our federal Constitution. But apparently, the people in the cheap seats don't understand what privacy entails. And so, we have to be extremely specific. So therefore, we're doing a ballot initiative that will actually put our right to abortion in our Constitution.
It's unfortunate that it's taking that type of an effort, but you have said as an attorney that the Roe v. Wade decision was not a strong one, that it was inevitable that they would be coming after it in some capacity. And so now we really need to fight for ourselves to ensure that reproductive rights are codified into law, as they have been, not surprisingly, mind you, that 3 of the reddest states in our country, Kentucky, Kansas, and Montana, did just that, codified Roe v. Wade into law when given the opportunity for the voters to get to the ballot box, which we are cautiously optimistic, but should be able to do the same here in Florida.
Yeah, you know what? Look, it all comes down to if this organized coalition of groups is organized enough, streamlined enough, efficient enough to turn around enough signatures by a deadline, and that's really what it's going to come down to. And they didn't get a start until all of this started coming down. So it's not something that's been around for that long, but it's definitely a challenge to do it. So anybody in Florida, please make sure that you find your way to a ballot petition. If you want, you can actually download it. It's FloridiansProtectingFreedom.com. This is only for people who are registered to vote in the state of Florida. And if you go there, you can download the petition, you can sign it, and you have to mail it in. But these are going to also be, if you go onto that website, you'll see all the different hub locations where you can go and do it in person and drop it off if you live near one.
FloridiansProtectingFreedom.com?
FloridiansProtectingFreedom.com. Yeah. Okay. That's the website.
Colin, if you could put that up, I just sent it to you in the chat. So for anybody who is a Florida resident, you have to be a resident of Florida, I believe.
Yeah, you have to be a registered voter. You have to be a registered voter.
Yes. So you're definitely going to want to go to that website. So the reason we're bringing this up is because obviously everyone is so caught up in the horse race of politics, like who's going to be the next president. We need to be focusing on tangible victories that are possible at the local level. And why this particular issue is so significant in the state of Florida, mind you, is that you're going to have a lot of down ballot races, state house, state senate, possibly even Congress, where if you want to be able to catch the wave, so to speak, you have to have a major issue that people are really excited about and want to get out to the polls in. And then by extension, as a candidate, you can generate a lot of interest behind you by obviously supporting that particular cause. I think that could be very effective going into next election year. But of course, in this case, the deadline is New Year's Eve of this year. So the fall, this is a very difficult time of year to canvass in Florida. It's a very difficult time to be going out to events. The heat index in Florida at this time of year hits the triple digits. So it is very, very difficult to get most people to do that. But once we get to September, October, November, December, it is going to be a race against time to get these ballots done, these petitions done, so that way we can get reproductive rights on the ballot for 2024. I do think the closer we get to it, the more and more people are going to be invested in ensuring that we do. And of course, we at Generational Change do have a drop-off hub in the county for Broward County, Florida. So check your county, find out where the drop boxes are or where your local DEC is. Make sure you get them over there. If you sign it, it obviously is going to have a hell of an impact. Listen, this is democracy in action in real time, as far as I can see.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. And there's going to be a lot of groups trying to hold it up and be difficult. And then you have to also account for, let's say it gets on the ballot and let's say it passes. Then the first thing that the legislature is going to do in the next session is come up with all sorts of rules and regulations to try to restrict whatever it was that passed. Like, it's a never ending game with these people. They are just not happy until they have like this complete authoritarian control over all of us.
Yep. No, you can never have enough. There is never ever enough. And again, guys, we've got 129 people watching. Only 88 have hit the like button. Smash that like button. Let's get that out there. Keep the conversation going. We are pinch hitting for our good friend Jordan Chariton of Status Coup, but Colin is still in the bullpen helping us out with our production for this evening. We're very grateful for that. Obviously, a happy 4th of July weekend to everybody. The next story we're going to talk about is actually a two-part story because friend of the show and obviously reporter for the show, Tina Desiree Berg, has been in Cop City, has been covering this really unfortunate story of a... Jen, how would you describe Cop City? What would be the best way to describe what is going on there?
I'm going to try to surmise it because there's a lot of different intersecting issues, but essentially the man is trying to build a fascist training facility in the middle of the environmental preserve area that is called the Lungs of Atlanta. So you've got the whole cop element of this ridiculous oversized training facility that is trying to be built that no good is coming from an over-militarized training camp for police officers. And then you have the environmental aspect that's really massive as well, because this whole wooded area is really important in terms of what it does for the city. So there's a lot of intersecting interests. I know somebody was killed there. One of the tree protectors was killed. I know they arrested a 93-year-old or something, one of the grandmothers for peace. Like, just ridiculous nonsense. That's just very, very just scary and militant.
Well, the second part of this, which we're going to cover, but Colin's going to punch up the video of Tina covering what's going on there right now, including the arrest of a peace activist who I believe is like 75 or 80 years old. You could tell that, she wouldn't hurt a fly. But there's, there is a, you want to call it a secret police or whatever they are. They're there to protect capital is what their role is. And as we have often said, if you really want to fix policing in the United States, you have to end qualified immunity. That is the only way that this is ever going to change, because the financial implications is what ultimately is what gives way to the code of silence within law enforcement. So if you take that element away, it's really the one surefire way to get them to stop, because no cop is going to protect another if it means it's going to be the end of their career. So ensuring that is done will make all the difference in the world. So we now have a video clip, and Colin, if you want to punch that up, of Tina covering what's going on right now in Cop City. And needless to say, from what we're being told, it's not very pretty. So yeah, it's something we hope will have a satisfying conclusion of some kind. But the local elected officials and whatnot, they're not doing anything. They're basically remaining silent. The two Democratic senators of the state will not address this issue. They'll basically just pass it along like it's not really happening, and assume that whatever solution is going to happen is going to be satisfying for all parties. And we know that that's not what's going to happen now. So that's kind of where we're at. So yeah, we're just waiting for the video. But yeah, I think that we always say qualified immunity is the only solution to this problem. There is nothing else. Until you start hitting police, everyone's like, let's defund the police. That's not going to solve it. That qualified immunity would.
There's absolutely no policy and has done nothing substantive for this city. He hangs his hat on midnight basketball, and I can assure you that more adults attend midnight basketball than so-called at-risk youth.
All right, so this is the main road here that basically surrounds the site where Ryan Millsap would be building his studios. So here on the right, you can see there's a sheriff parked there. one behind this guy. You can see the officer even has his lights on. This is where Colin and I went into the forest the last time and did the walkthrough of where the encampment had been, where the forest defenders are.
I said Home Depot did not want you here. I did not get told anything of the sort, or else I wouldn't be doing this, ma'am. I did not get told anything like that, and I wouldn't be doing that if I had been told that, ma'am.
We're having our free speech request. This is a boycott. StatusCoup City.
I was not told this. You hear yes, I did tell you. No, you didn't, ma'am. I did not hear a thing you said if you said something like that. Really? I did not get told that out there was private property and that I couldn't hold a sign. I did not get told that.
Yes, in fact, she is here. That her charge is criminal trespassing and that her bond has been set for $1,500. But apparently, I was hoping to help get her out tonight, but apparently, according to these people, it probably won't happen until tomorrow. You know, I'm just frustrated. This is just so unnecessary, and it's such a conversion of so many issues, and the fact that Tortuguita's mom and brother are here, it charges it up. But all the lights and the cameras and the action, it's just more the boys with the toys and the military-industrial complex at work again.
All right, we're past the line, supposedly. Stay together. Stay together, stay tight.
Cross the street, please. Cross the street.
Yeah, we want to cross the street. We heard you enough.
Over there.
Fascist! Fascist!
As far instead of focusing and spending all of this millions of dollars, almost 90 million, on training police, because we're not discussing, yes, I understand that they have some ordinances that they're going to do some racial bias training. However,
was that a golf clap?
for doing that, for, you know, that's something you're going to have to commit to that every day, okay? But the way it works, and when you're dealing in a capitalist society, is that if people don't have jobs, if they're concerned about how they're going to eat, when their stomach starts to touch their back, people are going to make decisions that's not going to always be in the best interest of everyone else, because it's self-preservation.
So Andre Dickens is not afraid of losing the next election. I think he knows very clearly that he is going to be a one-term mayor. However, his compliance up to this point, not only with the APF and the corporations that support the APF, but in the Atlanta way, has already guaranteed that when he moves on from this position, he'll do just like Keisha Lance Bottoms. She moved to the White House for a short time. She couldn't survive it because she couldn't hack it. She was not ready, but he'll move into another position and he'll have more money that's coming in still from these corporations. He's already been appointed to Joe Biden's re-election team. So we see the moves in play, right? And for the rest of the council members, they simply don't believe that people will remember. But the thing that I said to someone who interviewed me last week was that we will remember in November. And I don't care if it's this November, the next November, or 10 Novembers down the line, we will remember, because I don't even have to mention the term Cop City. The residents of Atlanta will know what they don't have. They will know that they don't have affordable housing. They will know that they don't have site remediation for lead levels in water. They will know that they don't have adequate child care. They will know that they don't have wraparound services in community. They will know that they don't have infrastructure repairs, and they will know more than anything that they do not have adequate representation on the Atlanta City Council. So we will remember in November, and we will vote you out.
Stop Cop City!
Stop Cop City!
Viva, viva Tortuguita!
Viva, viva Tortuguita!
Viva, viva Tortuguita!
Viva, viva Tortuguita!
In the meanwhile, we work on healing, we work in caring ourselves, and we work on future plans. Now is the StatusCoup City, but we will need the 70,000 signatures from people from Atlanta. So we have to go through everybody from Atlanta that is a voter to do that. The problem is that there is no information about that. The problem is that the media doesn't, they are busy, because I don't say they are not busy. The media is busy, the television is busy, just
No, it's okay, say it. I'm part of the media and I agree with you.
just telling the people the disasters, or when he died, when he died, it was hundred of people calling me that they wanted my interview to tell me that how many shots he has. I mean, all the drama, but they don't inform about what is going on, and we have to give that information. We have to teach the community what's going on, what is going to happen with the children. If the children, because they are making a jail for children. So their children in the future, they're going to jail if they don't behave correctly. And they don't care if people is sick with the mind, because there is a lot of mental illness, because the same situation, poverty, lack of food. So many people is not right. They don't have the vitamins. They don't have the family. So they don't care. You saw that it was a man dying, and he was ill. He was mentally ill. So all these situations, the media have to say it. The media have to help the community, but they don't do that.
Unbelievable. No, it's very believable, but it's true that there's nobody really covering this to the capacity that it needs to be covered. I can't say that it's not being covered in the Atlanta area because I'm not there. So I don't know if like at a local or state level, they have any news coverage there, but you certainly are not hearing about it enough nationally.
No, and you're not going to, because we are living in a police state, and we know why we're living in a police state. It's really not that complicated. When the economy becomes so detrimental to the average worker, and they get desperate, and they realize that only the working class uniting will solve this problem, they have to create a police state to basically threaten the population from ever forming any type of a working class alliance. Scare them to death with police violence, even if the police don't necessarily want to do what they're doing. And I would believe in most instances they don't want to do this, but they're doing it because it's their livelihood. It's what they're being told to do. Smash their heads in if they cross the line, or if they start, causing a ruckus, if you will. Because for the rich, the only thing that matters to them is protecting property. That's their primary objective. That's why anytime you see any type of major protesting, the second it results in property damage is when the cops spring into action. Especially if it's property damage, like in places like Ferguson, they don't care because there's no value there to them that really matters. But if you start walking the streets of Los Angeles, on like Wilshire, or even, dare I say, Rodeo Drive, if you ever saw anything like that there, that would be the end of it like that. It wouldn't last, because that's what matters to them. If people kill each other, that doesn't matter. But what they value is property. And so Cop City is a commodity of property that is very valuable to the powers that be. And that's why they're not backing down off of this issue. But that's also why it's nice to see so many people trying to do their part to ensure that this does not get built. But as we've alluded to, and why we're such huge supporters of Status Coup, very few of the left independent media spaces are really going to task to cover this critical issue that has to be addressed. But as we've said time and again, until you make it, until the core issue of policing in the United States is brought to the forefront of ending qualified immunity, the rest of this doesn't matter. When you end qualified immunity, you will end things like Cop City. My opinion. Could be wrong, but that's what I see.
Well, I don't know if ending qualified immunity gets rid of the impetus of the military-industrial complex to over-militarize and keep creating these like cop zones for urban warfare training, is what it looks like to me. But I don't think that we have to mention the fact, okay, that the size of the city comparable to the size of the facility that they're building. So in other words, LA and New York have larger police departments, and their facilities will be dwarfed by by comparison to this planned facility in Atlanta, when their police department is like, it's not even in the top 10 size-wise that we're talking about. So this is going to be a training facility for law enforcement from all over to come and train. Now that's where people start spinning it at council meetings in the way of, oh, well, think about all the money it'll come in because people are going to come and want to train their law enforcement here. And, this is how these kinds of things get manipulated at the council level to allow this. But organizations know who the money is behind this. I know that Home Depot is one of the big financial sponsors of this. I know there's other ones as well, but I think that's the kind of thing where people can get involved in how they spend their dollars and how they allocate their dollars, because there are a handful of organizations that are for-profit, obviously companies that are footing the bill for this.
Yeah, and the money is just it's all about money. I mean, there's a lot of people out there that have this idea in their head that there's some ulterior motive to anything in our system that isn't monetarily related, and it just isn't. Everything is about money.
But there's still this huge intersection here, because it can't go without being noticed that Atlanta is the largest city of its size with the size Black population that it has. I don't know the proper way to say that statistic. So like, of larger cities, Atlanta is the one with the most sizable Black population. And it needs to, we need to look at, is that why they're putting that there? Because to say there's no racial, like there's a lot of intersection here with this stuff. And the issue of concrete cities losing the last bit of greenland, tree, wooded area that are like the lungs. And I would also point out that this is somewhat of a sacred area. There's an indigenous story here. There's there were people that were like buried there. Like this is a very particular tract of land that's been preserved for a reason. So it's just really, this is not something that they're trying to get it so that they can vote on it, I believe. The process, that they can vote on it. I don't know if it's the same as our sort of ballot initiative, but they're doing what they need to do there to make this something that people can vote down.
Well, I don't know that. Well, yes, of course. And that's the whole thing about giving the people a voice. If they ultimately are able to do that, that is going to have a great impact on what the ultimate result is going to be here. But if you can stop it in one place, you would assume that you could probably stop it in other places. The problem, of course, that I've always said is that we can't, the working class as of today, and this is why I'm not a huge proponent of talking about the culture wars, is because there are things that are thrown in our direction all the time to get us to avoid talking about working class solidarity, which is absolutely necessary to squash a lot of these problems, because there's a hell of a lot more of us than there are of them. And when it comes to our civil liberties, when it comes to our constitutional rights, you are seeing these things trampled on time and time again, which is a perfect transition to what today is a very somber day in many ways. It is Julian Assange's birthday, and he is still being held in, is it Belmarsh prison? Belmarsh prison. And so they're still trying to extradite him to the United States. We all know why that is the case. Our First Amendment rights have been trampled on repeatedly for many years now. And as you have often said, if they are able to successfully extradite him and bring him to trial, it's regardless of the outcome, it's basically the end of the First Amendment. It's already hard enough as it is for people to want to bring stories like Cop City and Kalamazoo, Michigan forward, because very often they're on an island. It used to be that journalism was about getting the scoop and then making sure that you got your word in there about everything that's going on. Today, I mean, much like in the world of policing, there is a code of silence among the upper echelon of the journalism world today, because for them, the career is more important than the cause. And it is unfortunate that that's where we're at. But continuing this fight on behalf of Assange is essential, regardless of how people may feel about Julian Assange.
I think that I feel like, and this could be one of those things like, when you get a car, you start seeing more and more of that car. But I really do get this sense that more and more people are participating in actions for Assange, are mentioning Assange, are at least talking about what's going on. Because for a long time, very few people were even mentioning what was going on. So I think that we've made some progress with that. But yeah, ultimately, at the end of the day, if he's successfully prosecuted, we no longer have freedom of speech or press in this country. And that's really scary. It's like we're really getting to the scary tipping point.
Do we actually really have our First Amendment rights anymore, if we're being completely honest?
No, not in a lot of ways. I mean, obviously, you see everybody infringing the right to assemble, right to protest. I mean, a lot of states are getting rid of all sorts of different protest laws that protect protesters. Like in Florida now, you can run people over. Like they're definitely eroding it. But there's something very specifically nefarious about what's been going on with Julian Assange over the past 15 years. That's just really represents this total sinister side of the world wherein we no longer have like human rights. I can't explain it. It's a really, really big deal what's happening with him. I cannot stress this enough to people.
I have always had this sort of ability to just sort of see through all of the bullshit. And from the very beginning, when Assange came on the scene about 15 years ago, it was pretty obvious what he was doing. He was exposing American empire for all it was worth. And the people in charge had never really taken a shot across the bow. And of course, this was, within the decade, and still in many ways, despite what people want to believe about President Obama, was still coming at the backdrop of the war on terror. And for him to expose the torture program in 2010 the way that he did really said a lot to a lot of Americans about how, whether you believe it or not, now, do I believe that 9/11 was an inside job? I'm not willing to go there necessarily, but what I will say is that I firmly believe that 9/11 was something that could have been prevented, that there was enough warning signs, there was enough intel to prevent it from happening. But I truly believe that there are sinister people at work, much like as it was to start the war in Vietnam, that they look at not what's going to happen tomorrow, but what's going to happen 10 years down the road if we allow this to happen and what it could mean for our empire. And so when the war on terror began, you're thinking, well, the intention is to go in and get, Osama bin Laden. That's what we were sold on the idea of. But what was really happening was, we are going to find ourselves in a forever war. And we were very fortunate enough to have General Wesley Clark on our podcast to talk about that, where they basically showed how there were going to be 7 nations in the Middle East that they were going to go to. And of course, the end game has always been Iran. It's been that way ever since 1979. They have been trying to find a way to get back over there. And whether or not that is what really is going on with Trump's classified documents, one can only surmise. Remember, we're really on the outside looking in. If we know 5% of what's really going on, we're lucky enough to even get that amount. For me, I see this as everything is about maintaining the empire by any means necessary. If it means torturing people, if it means starting other wars, if it means protecting vital information regarding the 2016 Democratic primary, Julian Assange decided that his freedom was not as important as the truth. He made that decision that come hell or high water, I'm going to give the American people the hard truth that they're going to need to swallow. But as a result of his journalism, and that's what he did, his journalism had exposed the American empire in a way that I don't think was ever really exposed before. And once that type of a cat is out of the bag, you cannot put it back in.
I mean, he angered it in a way that it hadn't been angered. And I think with him, we're looking at something that I think is very, very personal. This isn't just a matter of just anybody that released information. I think a lot of it has to do with what he did in 2016 regarding Hillary Clinton, even though that's not what the charges are about. I do think that pissing off a certain group of people like exacerbated what went down with him, and just made people so much more vengeful. The fact that we had Hillary Clinton wanting to just go and like bomb him or something, you know, these are not reasonable, rational people. And he really went out there and spoke truth to power. And that is just not something that they're going to let happen. And it's always ironic that, and we even saw this with John Kiriakou, how the person who's the whistleblower ends up doing the time, and the person who gets the whistle blown on them, nothing happens to them. So, you know, Assange is a pretty big whistleblower.
He may be the biggest whistleblower, but we've seen what that has meant, and especially just this previous week, you know, we lost Daniel Ellsberg, and he was adamant. One of the last things he talked about before he died was you have to free Julian Assange. Like, this cannot stand. And I remember a few years ago when Tom Hanks and I forget who the other lead actress was, but they made that movie on the Pentagon Papers talking about freedom of speech. And I'm just thinking, do you guys not kind of see the irony here in what you're doing? Like, do you really just not see it? Or is it really just about a paycheck? Because everyone is saying, well, they're just acting. Well, I got news for you, ladies and gentlemen, because I've acted before. I was actually leading a play when I was young. When you are acting, yes, you are playing a character, but you're playing a part of yourself that's deep inside your psyche. And so if you're going to accept a role in a film, even if it's a big budget, major studio film that is dealing with the ramifications of freedom of speech, there is no way that you're not at least doing some studying about what really is going on here. And so I look at that and I think, yeah, people are way too comfortable with saying what they think is appropriate, but they're always saying it from a position of privilege. Now, I don't know if Jen, did we lose you?
No, it was weird. I just touched something because I'm on my phone. I feel like I can't do stuff. No, you didn't lose me. I'm here.
You decided to, pick your nose on the other side. So I understand it. It totally happens.
I would just do it right here. I would just do it. I won't do it on our show, but I'll do it on Jordan's.
Yes, of course. And so, remember, guys, my phone is not on right now. It's on low battery, but I know that there are probably some of you that are watching that have not smashed that like button. Make sure you get this out there to as many people. And of course, if you are not currently a subscriber to Status Coup News, you want to make sure that you get over to StatusCoup.com. I'm pretty sure is the website. I hope I'm saying it right. But remember, it's StatusCoup.com/join.
So I gotta tell you, a girl could really get used to this whole, Colin thing. I got this whole having somebody like handling shit is so. I feel like Elaine with the very wide lanes. Like, it's so luxurious. Like, I almost don't know what to do with this.
What episode was that?
It's when Kramer painted the lanes to make it so that it was one wide lane on the highway. It was where Newman ends up blowing up and fired, singing once, twice, three times a lady. How do you not remember this?
Listen, as much of a Seinfeld aficionado as I am not the Seinfeld aficionado that you and Jordan are.
No.
There are definite episodes that I have not seen.
Well, this one was it was Kramer adopted the highway. It's when he adopted the highway section.
Sure. Got my own highway. Yeah.
Right. So no, it's very luxurious having a producer person. I wish we had a producer person.
If you guys have any suggestions in terms of who you want to see, because I'll give one impression. You guys can choose between Bernie, Trump, or Bill Clinton. So start thinking about that as we get into our final segment, and this one is going to be fun because I've been waiting.
This one.
I've been waiting to do this one. You know what it is. So we here in the state of Florida have a real problem with the Democratic Party. It doesn't really know what it's doing, and sometimes I wonder if that is by accident or if it's on purpose, or maybe it's a combination of both. Some say that you can't be conniving and incompetent at the same time. I beg to differ. I think you can be. So we have seen the Democratic Party in the state of Florida flounder for many, many years. And of course, the common denominator amongst the decline of the Democratic Party, of course, is W. Wasserman Schultz. But over the last probably, I would say 5 years in particular, the deterioration of the party has gone from post-2016 election having current President Joe Biden as the keynote speaker, following up the following year in 2018, having former presidential candidate and former law clerk partner of Jen Perelman's, Julian Castro. And then after that, you somehow managed to sink down to, let's have Senator Chris Coons as the keynote speaker. And then we took a little break as a result of COVID. And now we are so very, very lucky to be blessed with the presence of none other than pretending to be a political figure. Actor Bradley Whitford is going to be the keynote speaker at the Florida Blue Gala. And of all places, Jen, where is the Florida Blue Gala going to be taking place this weekend?
Well, my understanding is they're doing it down at the Fontainebleau down on Miami Beach, which, yes, it's very hoity-toity, but quite honestly, it doesn't matter because regardless of where it is, the ticket prices are always ridiculous. And that to me is just very, very representative of our state party and why it is so incredibly feckless. It's even raising money for this event because they were bragging about how they were able to, I guess, sell it out or how much money they raised for selling tickets for the gala. And that's really fine and dandy, but you're really only swirling within your own little echo chamber. You're not reaching anybody else because how much are the tickets this year? Do you even know? Because they were absurd the last time I saw.
I was not in a position where I was even going to consider going. I have a business trip that I have to take, but as far as
because we're talking, it's hundreds of dollars to get a ticket to go to this. And so how the Democrats can think that that is somehow an inclusive strategy doesn't make any sense to me. And then to bring in a speaker who is just some sort of neolib celebrity mouthpiece, it's just very, it's very telling that they really don't seem to learn anything. They're not going to reach any new people. And yet they're all probably running around high-fiving each other and patting themselves on the back like, oh my God, we have a celebrity coming. He's going to come and talk. And he doesn't know anything about politics, but he was on the West Wing. So, you know, that counts, right?
He can pretend like he knows what's going on. I mean, I guess that would be important.
He was the deputy chief of staff on the West Wing. Doesn't that count?
I always say, if you guys haven't seen South Park, there's a great South Park episode. There was a trilogy called Imagination Land. And what they did in that episode, which was great, is they did a parody of Stargate, if you guys remember that movie with James Spader and Kurt Russell. And what they did was they didn't know what to do with this imagination land. They didn't know who would be good enough to figure out what's going on that side. So they brought in Kurt Russell because he played a guy in a movie once that knew what was going on the other side. And like, Kurt Russell will know what to do. He's like, I'm an actor. I don't know what the hell I'm doing. So
wait, I beg to differ. I kind of think Kurt Russell would know what to do also. He's really, I'm just saying. Like if I were
he's not Joe Pesci.
Jam, I wouldn't be averse to bringing in Kurt Russell. I'm just saying.
Yeah, no, he's not. He is not Joe Pesci, who has.
No, he's Snake Plissken. He's Snake Plissken.
That's true. But as George Carlin said, Joe Pesci looks like the kind of guy who can get things done. So
Joe Pesci does look like someone who can get things done, but so does Snake Plissken. So let's be real.
Colin, could you please pull up the magnificent tweet of Bradley Whitford, because I, for one,
is really nice.
Yeah, I wasn't really concerned. It was of no real consequence to me. I think it really said a lot.
So wait. You have to preface this, right? So behold, the opinion of who the Florida Democratic Party thinks is the best person to speak at their annual hoity-toity gala.
Now, granted, the decision was already made that he was going to be the guest speaker, but this comes down from Bradley Whitford. And of course, it wasn't like Hillary Clinton had just put out a tweet. This was a quote tweet from January of 2016. A Republican president could stack the Supreme Court with justices who will rip away all of the progress we've made. Well, maybe if you ran an honest primary, we wouldn't be dealing with that, but I'll get to that in a minute. Impossible for me not to express my rage today at so many progressives who couldn't get excited or didn't show up in 2016. You were too blind to the fundamental rights that were at stake. The most vulnerable citizens will pay the price of your fucking privilege. Vote. Gotta throw that in there at the end.
Got it. Okay, so the privilege here to me is suffocating for so many reasons. I don't think people use the term privilege correctly, or they don't understand what it is they're saying. Because to me, and the people that I've met through our many travels of canvassing and campaigning, regular people that are suffering, that have been suffering for multiple presidential administrations at this point, they don't give a crap who's in the White House. It doesn't matter to them. I know people that their lives were equally as bad under Obama, under Trump, under Biden. It doesn't matter to them. So the idea that you think that if only Hillary had won, that things would be better, that to me shows the ultimate amount of privilege. Like, to me, that almost is oozing privilege, that you actually think it would have made a difference. Not to mention the fact that we'd be at war in Iran, probably Syria, wherever else. But I mean, anybody who really is still doing that sanctimonious crap about the 2016 election has not learned a damn thing.
Well, there's another element here that a lot of people don't want to talk about. And the most significant reason why Donald Trump won the election, well, there's two reasons. Number one, I don't know how many times this needs to be repeated, but I'll repeat it again now, since I literally gave my blood, sweat, and tears to the 2016 Bernie Sanders presidential campaign. That primary was not on the level. And I didn't need WikiLeaks to assure me that it wasn't. With your own two eyes, if you can trust your eyes and what you see and what you feel, there was something really wrong with that primary. Something as simple as two town halls, Bernie Sanders and Hillary Clinton back to back with Chris Cuomo, basically trying to charge Bernie with a crime with the questions that he was being asked, to Hillary Clinton walking out on stage and getting a hug and a kiss from Chris Cuomo. It's the little nuances like that that show you just how rigged the primary process was. And I'm not even getting into the super delegates, and that still exists in the Democratic Party. What you have here is a lack of recognition of what the primary issue was in many ways that united the Bernie and Trump voter when it came to the 2016 election, and that was the Trans-Pacific Partnership. If Hillary Clinton was elected president, the TPP was going to be passed into law. And if you think NAFTA and normal trade relations with China is bad, you haven't seen anything compared to what that shit would have brought to this country. You would have basically had open borders. You would have been competing with people in other countries that can get paid 5 cents on the dollar compared to you. And that's what you're going to be competing against. And you'll really just, I mean, talk about an economic catastrophe that was averted by her not getting to the White House. But then on the other hand, Trump gets there and you get 3 Supreme Court justices that have decided that bodily autonomy no longer exists for women, even though they lied during their confirmation hearings. What's the point? You're fucked either way. No matter who gets there, you are completely screwed.
Yeah. I mean, look, we cannot overlook what we have said a bazillion times about the amount of failed administrative efforts to pass some sort of codification, do something where we wouldn't have to be hanging in the balance by, you know, a Federalist Society panel of judges. So there have been 3 Democratic administrations that had supermajorities that could have codified this. And yes, that would also have its fair share of challenges. There would be challenges to that. There always are challenges to things. But, you know, when you sit there and act like somehow this happened to you, when you were in the driver's seat multiple times and chose not to do anything. And I would also argue that approving and stamping a bunch of federal judges that Trump appointed without any real blocking, any real resistance, was part of the problem as well. You know, and I would argue that they're still doing that. Why are the Democrats not seeking to impeach Alito and Thomas?
Justice Alito.
Right. And so when you look at that right now, we have Democrats that could be seeking to take out those justices. Now, whether or not that would succeed is really neither here nor there, but they don't even attempt to do anything. And then they sit back and act like victims of this court. You know, there are grounds for impeaching both of those justices right now.
There is 1,000%. You don't even need to worry about expanding the court. All you have to do, even if you only get one of them, one thing that Justice Roberts has shown since he's been on the court is that when the court is 4-4 and he's the deciding voice, he will basically play the role of neutral arbiter. He will do that. You only need to get one of these guys off the court, and you have Thomas dead to rights. Like, he is as guilty gets, and that's only what you're seeing on the surface. You're only seeing what the news is allowing you to see. You can imagine just how bad it is behind the scenes. If you had any idea, you know how many, you know, you talk about the cases that you know of when it comes to sexual abuse that Thomas is being charged for with, why is her name slipping me right now? You're on mute. Jen's audio has been kicked.
No, Colin mutes me because he's doing it for the audio benefit, but he's usually really good about being Johnny on the spot. Anita Hill is who you're talking about.
Anita Hill. You think that
that should have disqualified him right there, but no.
But you really think that she's the only one?
Oh,
you
hell
think
no.
that he's the only one that has felt his wrath, or probably a hell of a lot of others that are on there? And this is an easy get. I mean, you had but you know what? You know what the bottom line is, ladies and gentlemen? The Me Too movement was hell-bent on making this a political issue until it got to Joe Biden's doorstep. And the second it got to his doorstep, they decided, well, I guess that's the end of it there. I guess we got to stop because, you know, Democrats got to be protected. That is the reason. But there is somebody who could come on here and talk about exactly what he chose not to do when he was president of the United States, and certainly could have made the circumstances better. And I have no doubt that the audience would love to hear from the former president of the United States. Jen, would you please introduce?
I know that you're going to do him. I know you're going to do Bill. I know he's going to do Bill.
You know, I love coming on here because I got a couple of different reasons why I'm here today. To this guy dead in the audience, whoever is suggesting that Cornell West 2024 is a good idea, let me assure you of one thing, my friend. There is absolutely nothing that is going to stop us from making sure that you are voter shamed and intimidated into voting for the Democrat in 2024. That's the only option that's really out there, because either it's us or, you know, you're getting that Trump or DeSantis guy. I don't think you want that. But I wanted to come on here and level with each and every one of you, because I think it's important for you to all understand that when I became president of the United States over 30 years ago, I had a super majority in the House and Senate. And you know what we decided to give the American people? Well, we, of course, didn't give them universal health care, even though we pretended like we were fighting for it. We also didn't codify Roe v. Wade, even though we had many an opportunity to do just that. No, what we decided to do in my first 2 years in the presidency, without the excuses of the 94 sweep of the Republicans, I decided we were going to get NAFTA. And we all know what a wonderful opportunity NAFTA presented. We were going to absolutely gut the unions, outsource all our jobs, and make sure you guys work for slave wage while I made myself and Hillary 100 millionaire. What better opportunity could have been presented for each and every one of us? I mean, specifically me. So it worked out great there, but let's not stop there. It gets even better. We decided we were going to have normal trade relations with China. I mean, come on. How could you not want to have normal trade relations with China? They built sweatshops without windows so that way the people who are mercilessly being tortured day in and day out to make our fine products at a cheap price, that they don't go jumping out any windows because they just want to, end it all. We've got profit to be made. So you all have to understand exactly why that is the case. But I have not done yet because I got another one right up my sleeve. We passed the bipartisan crime bill in 1994. And let me assure you, I did everything in my power to make sure that we got as many cops on the street and as many innocent people behind bars for the sake of making a few extra bucks. Ain't that something special, Jen? What do you think?
I think you should be in prison. And you are leaving.
No. Hold on.
You are leaving out.
We've gone over this. Excuse me, the president was talking, and I'm still the president. You cannot send me to jail. It's not possible.
But
I made the jails. I made it possible. They could never.
You forgot to also mention your great telecom act. You also forgot to mention repealing Glass-Steagall. You have a whole bunch. You have a lot of goodies that you're in your little backpack of accomplishments.
Well, you didn't even let me explain myself. I mean, I only talked about what I did when I had all of the Democrats supporting my issues. Then when I got a Republican majority to join me in 94, 95, 96, and beyond, I mean, come on now. We were certainly grateful at the start of 96 to ensure my reelection against Bob Dole, that old Sasquatch. When we made sure that we were passing the 96 Telecom Act, and did you know how many national media companies existed in America back in 1996? 55. That's how many we had. You know how many we have today? 5. That's all we got. And you can thank me for that. So we certainly made sure that the media in this country became as monopolized and contrived as could possibly be. And we did a really, really amazing job with that. But I ain't done yet. I also decided that the banking system was never going to be the same again. And we passed ourselves a wonderful repeal of Glass-Steagall in 1999. I was almost out of the White House already when I did that, but I had to make sure that I got every book deal. I got all of my foundation lined up. The Clinton Foundation, it's not like we're really doing anything for humanity there.
The Clinton Foundation is a money laundering operation. Okay?
Listen, Attorney Perelman, and I use that term loosely, that is for the courts to decide. And I have never been brought in front of a court that ever has to tell me exactly what I can and cannot do when it comes to.
You know what? We could go talk to the people in Haiti about the Clinton Foundation because we're still wondering where all the recovery money went. So.
Well, that's really unfortunate, but no one's ever going to get prosecuted for something so ridiculous. Listen, there is profit to be had. I'm out there making it, and remember.
You know what? Maybe you'd care more if the damage was to Epstein's Island instead of Haiti.
I don't know what the hell
maybe
you're talking
that would
about.
get your attention.
Listen, I have never been there. I don't know. I have not been to that island. I only was on the airplane on the tarmac, and you can never, ever.
26 times. 26 times you were on the airplane.
And I never managed to get myself off that plane. You can never, ever prove that I got off that plane. You just can't.
Only I would believe you. There's no way you flew on Epstein's plane 26 times and had no idea what kind of nonsense was going on there. There's no way.
Why they call me Slick Willie, and I'm able to get away with it nonstop. And so for each and every one of you out there that are still wondering why this country is in such bad shape and why things have not worked out, I mean, listen, it is still a tragedy to this day that I didn't get to be the first gentleman in the history of the United States as former president as well. Hillary, unfortunately, she just couldn't cut the bacon when it was all said and done. But I'm living a great life. I'm still doing really well. And I certainly hope each and every one of you remembers exactly what I did to destroy this country. So while you're all out there trying to survive, I'm out here looking to thrive. Great to see y'all. And remember, the Democrat way is the only way, whether you like it or not. Bye.
It's so gross. It's not as gross when I don't have to sit next to you. It's infinitely worse when I'm sitting next to you and you do Bill.
And yet,
so skeevy.
And yet Brad Whitford wants to quote tweet Hillary Clinton.
Right.
Like, that's somebody who must be quote tweeted, who must be acknowledged as this, oh, if only this country had Hillary Clinton. But what that really tells me, and sort of the conclusion of the whole, insanity of this conversation regarding Bradley Whitford, is that this is a class war. And for somebody in his class, keep in mind, ladies and gentlemen, Bradley Whitford is worth somewhere between $10 and $15 million, and that's after being married to Jane Kaczmarek and probably had to give half his money away to. So this guy has been very, very well off for multiple decades. To say that he is disconnected from the average person would be an understatement. The reason why they're making such a stink right now regarding the Supreme Court is because they don't actually give a rat's ass about working class people. What they care about is that the Supreme Court is now starting to move in on their privileged territory, and they don't like it. That's all it is, nothing more. Do they care about regular people? Of course not. They care about their own special private world that they exist in. If they gave a rat's ass, they would be out there screaming from the top of their lungs, we need a universal health care system in the United States. We need a living wage. We need stronger labor behind unions that are not overrun by union bosses and delegates instead of the rank and file, who are the ones who should be having a say in whether or not they endorse a candidate, and that includes the president. We should be talking about the fact that we don't have clean drinking water in this effing country, and that's the biggest reason why we should be transitioning away from fossil fuels, regardless of what you think about climate change. People deserve to have clean water to drink. It should be a basic
Can we though say, I mean, based on our personal lived experience, that this speaker really does properly represent what our state party is? Because I think that they did a very good job of picking somebody. Like, they are probably so excited about this speaker. And yet we're sitting here thinking they're clueless, because when I look at someone like him, who clearly has no clue, probably couldn't tell you the top 5 things that Hillary ever did or didn't do, probably doesn't know anything about anything. And the fact that
you want to really look into her Senate record when she was there.
Right. Like, this is someone who has never bothered to check. He's just sort of, parroting whatever the talking point is he got from Rachel Maddow.
And the one thing I will say in Obama's defense, they really went after him relentlessly for multiple years about Benghazi and about Libya, and he's definitely guilty of that. But let me tell you something, guys. Libya is Hillary's war. That is her war. She is 1,000% the biggest culprit in what happened to Gaddafi and the slave trade market that started. Libya was the most prosperous nation in all of Africa. That includes South Africa. So the idea that we're not going to point the finger in the direction of where it belongs, she has still been able to skate on this.
Yeah, I think that someone like him saying something so ironically privileged about privilege is just, it really is just really apropos with the whole scenario of how out of touch they are. But when I see someone like him saying something like that, in my mind, I just think this is not a serious person. This is not somebody who actually reads. This is not somebody who does any amount of research. This is not a serious person. This is just a parrot. And when you bring someone like that in, you obviously are just wanting to hear from a parrot.
Yeah. And by the way, another thing that I want to bring up, and I'm noticing a lot of the conversation that's been going on, one of the great reasons why Dr. Cornel West running for president makes all the sense in the world is you are not going to force the hand of the Democratic Party within a primary run. And the reason you're not going to do that is because the superdelegates still exist. The way the party is funded still exists. Did you know that with the exclusion of canceling student debt, that Justice Roberts, in his dissent, not his dissent, his conclusion in the case, you know who he quoted as the reason why student debt will not be canceled? Nancy effing Pelosi, saying the president doesn't have the authority to cancel student debt. And that's what he said. So keep in mind that this is a rigged game. the joke is on all of us, and we're still pretending like we can make a difference by not actively uniting the working class. If we do not do that, there is no point to this. That's why Jordan's work is so vital. Anybody else who is covering these major issues needs to recognize that that is the only way that we're going to save ourselves, is when the working class unites. Now, what could happen theoretically with Dr. Cornel West running third party? Well, if he continues to increase his polling numbers, the Democratic Party, especially in states like Pennsylvania, Arizona, Michigan, Georgia, and so on, will have no choice but to come and meet him where they are, or the whole nation is going to see that they're all full of shit. And you guys all saw the other day how those privileged Pod Save America guys, John Favreau and Dan Pfeiffer, saying you need to get out there and vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah.
This is a year and a half before the election, mind you.
Yeah, again, talking about people that have absolutely learned nothing as far as like voter shaming. And it's like, these people, they still haven't, with the like fool around and find out, they still haven't gotten that that's what they're still playing with. And this time it's going to be even worse. There's no chance. You know, Cornel West running does a lot of different things, depending on the nature of his campaign, depending on how much of a ground game that he has. But I think that there's a lot of potential to engage a lot of working people and build coalition and see some forward movement, and especially be able to pull along and help some down ballot races and some locals that might actually be able to really succeed. So there's a lot of potential that his campaign could help. But as far as the Dems, they are just going to look at him like he's a Ralph Nader nuisance. And they're already starting out with that kind of nonsense. And when I see anybody saying such stuff, that's not a serious person, because you obviously haven't learned from last time. So you'll learn now. It's going to be another one.
And as we pointed out when Jordan came on our podcast a couple of weeks ago, you know, the polling consistently has RFK and Marianne in the 30% range, and in some cases an additional 10% of undecideds. That is a 5-alarm fire for an incumbent president, if there ever was one. When Trump was president before COVID, and they were desperately trying to figure out, how do we primary this guy? The best that Bill Weld ever did, potentially running in a primary, was no higher than 5 or 6% total. And Trump had an approval rating with the Republican voting base of 95%. You know where Biden's approval is? Well, it's not there. It's nowhere near there, and it's never going to be anywhere near there. And there are a succession of reasons that we could go over as to why it will never be there. But the biggest one is not the student debt. The biggest one is not the $15 minimum wage. The biggest one is not even the fact that he's a lying sack of you-know-what when it comes to healthcare or the environment, and especially Ukraine. The biggest reason that he is a failure beyond hope at this point is what he did to the railroad workers. That is number one. It always will be. And anyone who thinks that labor is just going to line up behind him is nuts. And the fact that they had to come out this far in advance and say, we labor are united behind Joe Biden, how desperate does that look to the average independent voter?
Let's see what happens come August 1st with the Teamsters negotiation for UPS, and see if they don't end up doing a walkout, because from my understanding, the rank and file voted overwhelmingly that they're ready to walk. And that they're being serious. Of course, this is very exciting for me, but that's, let's see how Joe's going to deal with that, because the Teamsters, that's going to shut some stuff down.
It is. And a good friend of ours, who we will not mention, has pretty good intel that they're really not sure at this point. They think it's very possible that a national strike could actually happen. And if that happens, let me tell you something. What you guys have to remember about UPS workers going on strike is that it might actually inspire a plethora of other workers to do the same. And then you have a general strike literally unfolding in real time. That's what could happen. And this could have easily been avoided if President Biden was actually a president for working people, and he's not.
I have to say, though, like for me, and you know this, it's like I am very looking forward to that. And I know that strikes are hard. And I know that it's not something that's easy for the people that are doing it, but I do think that we're getting to where there is no other way to handle this. And that disruption is going to be the only thing that the oligarchs are going to respond to. I actually would love the idea of UPS and the railroad workers and FedEx all striking at the same time. And I think that it would be glorious. I think it would be, because there's no way that people wouldn't pay attention to that. They'd have to. They'd be losing like a couple $2 billion a day.
Dave L. with a really great point that I think kind of summarizes what it's even like at the local level. The Teamsters have been way better than the AFL-CIO for years now. And there's a reason for that. And we felt that here at the local level. And we won't say anything further, but that's all you really need to know. Here's the bottom line. The AFL-CIO is the biggest union in the United States. It is the number one union, let's be honest, that is in lockstep with the Democratic Party establishment.
It's also in lockstep with the teachers union. And that, like in Florida, the largest component, the largest member union of our AFL-CIO is the teachers union. So when you're looking at that, that's a big chunk of who they're representing. And we know who the National Teachers Union is in cahoots with. I mean, look, she's already come out and said it. So it's no surprise that this is how that's going to go with the AFL-CIO. The Teamsters are in a different position.
They definitely are, and I think they have a lot of leverage, and I think people are looking for it. I think people are looking for a union that's really going to stand up for workers for once. The Railroad Workers Union has been decimated for decades and decades, but as I've always said to Jen, if there is one union that you don't F with, it's the Teamsters.
And can we just quickly mention what it is they're really fighting about? One of the major things that they're fighting about is air conditioning in the trucks. And I have come to learn, and this is incredibly infuriating, that not only do they not put air conditioners in the trucks, they actually purposefully have the air conditioners taken out. Those air conditioners come standard, and UPS has them removed because they think that the air conditioners will decrease the efficiency, because then they'll be lollygagging and sitting in their trucks. And then there's also this thought that also maybe it has to do with gas prices. But the reality is they proactively remove the air conditioners that come in their trucks. Right. So like that to me, I mean, you know, yeah. And that to me, if that's not screwing with the Teamsters, I don't know what is.
And the last thing I want to point out, both parties are traitors. It is not our job to make sure Biden gets reelected. That's his job. He was supposed to fulfill his campaign promises, and he has delivered zero. Frankly, he has delivered less than zero. And if you're still voting lesser evil, you always will. And that is the problem here, because what you have to remember is that he is the president of the United States. He has the authority to do things to mitigate these crises that we're living in right now, including canceling student debt. What the Supreme Court says doesn't mean anything. Just like what the parliamentarian says doesn't mean anything.
Okay. Well, no, this is the thing about the Supreme Court. We're not going to get into this now and here. I've done a lot of work into these latest decisions and a lot of reading into it. But the thing about that case is that we all know that the manner in which Joe Biden put that forth, that they knew they were going to lose that. They knew that was going to get struck down. Yeah. He knew damn well it wasn't going to go through, which is why he did it that way. Again, Mick resistance. The reality is that if he wanted to get it through, he still could get it through, and it wouldn't be able to be struck down by the Supreme Court. And his people damn well know that. So this was purposefully done in a way to make it look like that the Democrats were trying to get something through, but oh, the Republican Supreme Court shot it down. But they knew it was going to get shot down, which is why they did it the way they did it. Anyway, more on that when we get into the decision.
Yes, and I think more and more people are getting hit to what's really going on. But for those of you who are here, we are very grateful that you've come on to this stream. We hope you have at least enjoyed some of our content we've delivered. We know we can't be Jordan and obviously deliver all of the status quo wonderment that you guys enjoy. But we are Generational Change on YouTube. We will be going live on our channel in exactly just over 20 minutes. So if you guys want to head over there.
And what are we talking about tonight? Because as we said earlier, today is Julian Assange's birthday. And over on our live stream, we are going to be speaking with a couple of people that are very familiar with what's going on in the Assange case. And so we'll talk about a lot of the actions that went down today around the country. I know that there were celebrations commemorations of Julian's birthday. So we're gonna get into that. You told me Kevin Gostola is coming back, who I always love to see him.
Friend of both shows, Kevin Gostola of Shadowproof will be coming on. He has been he's been the journalist of journalists regarding Julian Assange.
He is to Julian Assange what Jordan is to Flint.
Yes, and then of course you also have Anna Batiza, who is part of the Assange Defense Fund. So she will be coming on to talk as well to give us an update on exactly what his status is. And again, we will be going live in 22 minutes. So for every one of you, thank you so much. Lila, great to see you hanging around for the full episode. Of course, thank you, Tyler. Thank you, Patrick. Thank you, Cooper. Thank you, all of you guys. Please remember to go over to Generational Change with a J on YouTube. We will be going live in exactly 21 minutes. So head over there, smash the like button there as well. For those of you who may or may not remember, Jen is an attorney and activist here in South Florida. I was her congressional campaign manager when she ran against Debbie Wasserman Schultz in the 2020 Democratic primary. We have in turn continued our efforts here in the area to transform politics into service, which is what Generational Change is all about. Our current efforts are to get petitions signed throughout the entire county to get reproductive rights on the ballot for 2024.
Yeah.
We also go live on Monday and Wednesday evenings at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. That's why Status Coup started a little later. We wanted to transition pretty comfortably into our show. But if you guys currently are not subscribed to Status Coup News, make sure you get over to statuscoup.com/join. This is where real journalism, with all due respect to other channels that are out there, the real hard-hitting stories that their primary objective is not to get clicks, but to get the real story out there. From what is going on in East Palestine, Ohio, from what is going on in Cop City, from what is going on in Flint, Michigan, and Kalamazoo, Michigan, and every place in between throughout the nation. This is where hard-hitting news is taking place. We could not be more grateful for Jordan Chariton, for Colin Tooley, for Tina Desiree Berg, for everyone who is involved with this amazing channel and making sure that news is delivered. And I am giving a shout out right now to somebody who some of you like, some of you don't like. But I will tell you that I have nothing but respect for Crystal Ball over at Breaking Points, because she uses her major platform of almost 1 million subscribers to cover these stories. If you have a major platform, and I don't give a damn if you're on the left or the right or in the middle, stuck in the middle, shout out to our friend Osiris, cover these stories. This is what people need to hear about, and it can't just be about the clicks. And let's also give a shout out to our friends over at Due Dissonance. They have been making an effort as well to make sure that these stories are covered. It is imperative that we talk about what's going on in Cop City. It is imperative that we talk about Kalamazoo, Flint. We talk about what is going on in East Palestine, and we do not forget it, because another one is right around the corner. It's going to happen tomorrow. And we're so happy to just play a small part in helping forward that message as we do over Generational Change. Jen's final thoughts.
No, it's always like a privilege to be invited to host for someone else, and especially someone who is an actual journalist. And, you know, we, of course, never promote ourselves as such, which is why we coalesce with people that are journalists to bring experts on. But yeah, I'm always thankful for any amount of, you know, shout outs we get from Jordan. And he's just always, it's always just been a really very mutual, collaborative thing. You know, just, I like people that just want to do the work.
Smash that like button, subscribe, share, become a member if you're not currently, and get yourselves over to Generational Change in less than 20 minutes right here on YouTube. We'll see you guys real soon. Have a very happy 4th of July, and all of you be well.